Hello and good morning in Korea and good evening from New York, and hello to all the friends in between. My name is Stefan Schweinfest. I'm the director of the UN Statistics Division. Welcome to this session number 9, which is on global data collaboratives and co-investments. So the two things we will be talking about a lot is collaboration and a little bit about money and resources also. So I'm very much looking forward. We have this structured in 2 parts. We will first have a dialogue with development cooperation perspectives, and then we have a dialogue with the user perspective. So there will be 4 segments of about 20 minutes. I will first talk to the first panel and ask some questions. Then you, the audience, can ask questions, and then I will introduce the second panel and ask my questions, and then we will finish with the user questions. So what is the subject really that we are talking about? It is called the UN Global Platform. What is the UN Global Platform? Let me read it to you. It's a cloud service ecosystem to support international collaboration in the compilation of official statistics using new data sources and innovative methods to help countries measure the Sustainable Development Goals. So there are 4 elements. What is it? A cloud service ecosystem. Why did we invent it? To support international collaboration for official statisticians. The main purpose is to use new data and innovative methods, and the ultimate policy objective is to support the Sustainable Development Goals through the compilation of information. The Office of National Statistics of the United Kingdom has supported us to build this platform. They have taken the lead on this and invested heavily, so I'm grateful for that. And they had also the support, in-kind support from Statistics Netherlands, Statistics Canada. My office was also very much involved. This has been going on for a couple of years. We have at the United Nations, under the Statistical Commission, a global working group on big data. And this group has been supervising the work of this UN platform. And there was a report for the 2020 Commission that described how far we had gotten at that point. And what we had on the global platform there at that moment were AIS, Automatic Identification System data. They track the position of every ship minute by minute and help to estimate indicators on trade, travel, and transportation. And the other project, lead project, we had satellite imagery for the mapping of crops and land cover. So these were the original proofs of concepts, as we call them. And we worked extensively with the ONS in the UK. But we also had early partners in the regions, and we have now developed a number of regional hubs in China, Rwanda, and the United Arab Emirates. And we will hear a little bit, certainly, from the Chinese hub in this conversation. So where are we with this now? The UN Global Platform has been turned over to us, to the global statistical community, on the 1st of June 2020. So this is a very recent development. So the global platform is now for all of us. The idea is to put there 3 things: data, tools, and training. So we want to discuss in this session how we can do it, what are the partners that we need, and how can the various partners support what we are doing there. We are seeking active collaboration, in-kind contributions, that is the experiences, the data, and so we need to work not only with statisticians, but also with data scientists, data engineers, academia, the private sector, and non-governmental institutions. So this is a very broad partnership, and you will see that also our speakers in the session do represent this broad spectrum of communities. We will also, in order to scale this up and make this happen, as a point where everybody can come and bring their expertise and get expertise for the countries. In order to scale this up, we will also need financial support. So we will also have to talk to the donor community, trying to get them excited about this mechanism. So this is a little bit the background of where we are. You can imagine this is a big responsibility for my office, and it's a recent responsibility because we have been really taking this fully over since June this year. So I'm very happy that in the first part of the panel, we will have the development cooperation perspectives. And I have three speakers, Mr. Dominic Bruce from Global Affairs Canada, Mrs. Elaine Tan from the Asian Development Bank, and Mr. Xian Zhude from the National Bureau of Statistics of China. So I will talk to them. I will have a little chat with them one by one, ask them a couple of questions, and then I will invite all of you to also come in with your questions. So may I start with my conversation, and I invite Mr. Dominic Boursier to sort of join me on the podium, the virtual podium, and Elaine, and of course, Mr. Xian. And I start with Dominic. I will not give long bios. If you want to know all the youthful sins of our speakers, you can go to the website. I'm sure you will find interesting information there. I will just give the general institutional titles of our speakers. So Dominic Boursier is the Deputy Director, Public Financial Management and Natural Resources Specialists at Global Affairs Canada. And he has been with Global Affairs Canada since 1999. So this is quite a moment. So Dominic, maybe to begin, perhaps you can explain to us a little bit the vision and the portfolio of Global Affairs Canada. What are you mostly supporting? And then in particular, of course, we want to know about what are you doing for statistics. We know that you have supported many projects in capacity building in developing countries, formerly through CEDA. And most notably, I have gotten to know you through the Caribbean project, but I understand most recently you have also started to work with West Africa. So perhaps could you give us an overview on your ongoing projects and your planned projects, or these national or regional projects, and how could countries who are interested to work with you get involved or included in such initiatives? And then, of course, finally, because the topic of our meeting is very much data innovation and the use of big data, I would like to know whether this topic of data innovation and the use of big data and new skills like data science and modernization of statistics are part of what you consider statistical capacity building initiatives. So Dominic, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan, for the kind introduction. And thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel. It's an honor to join all of you today to outline Global Affairs Canada, the effort to strengthen statistical capacity in developing countries. So in terms of our overall vision and portfolio, our overarching framework in support of statistical capacity to developing countries is underpinned by Canada's feminist international assistance policy, which emphasize the need for strengthened data systems for evidence-based policymaking and promote the use of gender disaggregated data. It also supports ensuring no one is left behind by strengthening the capacity of national statistics systems to remove statistical barriers to inclusion, including gender disaggregation and inclusion of marginalized persons. So Global Affairs Canada works in close collaboration with the International Development Research Centre, IDRC, and Statistics Canada to provide funding and technical assistance to data and statistics capacity building in developing countries. So over the last few years, Canada has provided approximately 25 million American dollar per year in multilateral and bilateral support to strengthen statistical capacity, primarily in the Americas, Africa, Asia, and Eastern Europe. In line with Canada's continued commitment to our global health, particularly with regards to maternal, newborn, and child health, and the empowerment of women and girls, Global Affairs Canada main areas of focus for statistical capacity building is on strengthening civil registration and vital statistics systems and promoting the gathering and use of gender disaggregated data. So for instance, Canada established in 2015 the Center of Excellence for CRVS, Civil Registration and Vital Statistics, which is a global resource hub that actively supports national effort to develop, strengthen, and scale up sustainable CRVS system by facilitating access to technical assistance, global norms and standard, and evidence and best practice on those systems. Now, in terms of specifics and projects, so as you said, Stefan, we've funded a number of projects over the year to build statistical capacity in developing countries. So two of them that I wanted to highlight more closely. The one in Senegal with with Global Affairs funding, Statistics Canada provided technical assistance between 2016 and March 2020 to the National Agency of Statistics and Demography of Senegal and line ministries to improve the coordination and collaboration of the national statistical system and the production of quality statistics in the education, agriculture, and extractive sectors. So for instance, Canada worked with Senegal and built a collection and dissemination platform for the extractive data collection activities. In the Caribbean, through the Project for the Advancement of Statistics in the Caribbean, Global Affairs provides funding also to Statistics Canada to improve the statistical capacity of 14 English-speaking member states of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, between 2015 and 2022. So there are four main streams to that project. One is business survey, so including the creation of business registers and other business survey, including CPI. Two is enhancing the national accounts. Three is household surveys, so including the census and labor force surveys. And four is about communication and dissemination, so creating websites, helping create statistical information product and disseminate them. We are also helping these countries on a responsive basis on SDGs and data science. And finally, in terms of data innovation and use of big data, obviously our department supports innovative approach and solution for all its international system programming, including statistical capacity building, while we're being responsive to the needs and priorities of developing countries. So an example of project using innovative technology is in Tanzania, where Global Affairs Canada works with UNICEF to register and issue birth certificate to 3.5 million girls and boys under the age of 5 through an innovative birth registration system, which was developed by Tanzania's birth registration agency in partnership with Tigo, which is a mobile service provider. So the system used innovative technology that quickly uploads records of all birth registration to a centralized system through text message sent from mobile phones. So this allowed for real-time monitoring of bird registrations at national, regional, and local level, and greatly simplifies the registration process. So basically, this is what I want to highlight from Global Affairs Canada, and thank you for allowing me to present what are our main support in terms of statistical capacity building in developing countries.
Wow, I mean, thank you for sharing all of this. I can see you have a very broad experience, broad in terms of geography, spanning the entire globe, and broad also in terms of topics. I note, I mean, your focus on gender and marginalized groups. And of course, we all know that Canada is working strongly to support the CRVS agenda. And I can see you are doing it in a very modern fashion with what you just described in Tanzania. So thank you for sharing this. I mean, it's always nice to hear that the donors are also paying attention to our sometimes seemingly boring, very technical issues. But I mean, if there's a true understanding how important these underlying data are, that is very much appreciated. Moving on to Elaine Tan from the Asian Development Bank. She is the advisor of the Office of the Chief Economist and Director General and head of something that is called Statistics and Data Innovation Unit at the Asian Development Bank. So now that sounds already very exciting. Her work at the ADB includes building statistical capacity in developing member countries, undertaking economic research, and using new data sources and methods. So let me ask you the following question. The Asian Development Bank has a long history of supporting the statistical community, and actually we work very closely together. I mean, I think we had one of the last workshops together before, unfortunately, the pandemic hit in Manila in February this year. So, I mean, we have been always very pleased to work with you. I must ask you about the Statistics and Data Innovation Unit. That sounds like a very exciting title. So you are heading that. Could you describe the main objectives and functions of your unit and does this also really mean that data innovation is part of the overall strategy of the Asian Development Bank? If we look at the funding for statistical activities, what kind of innovative projects are you particularly interested in? And is it more at the country or at the regional level that you're active? And what criteria do you normally use? I'm sure you're getting many requests for funding and you will have to take a difficult decision where you want to invest your resources. And then, of course, we are coming here now from the UN Global Platform. Would a project like that, an infrastructural project at the global level, actually also have any chance to be supported and funded or through country projects? Perhaps we could explore this. And because we believe that a project like ours could reduce cost at the country intervention. And of course, same question as I asked Dominic. I mean, when we think of statistical capacity building, we may think sometimes of the more traditional sectors of statistics, but does modernization of statistic, use of big data, data science, play an important role in your funding of statistical capacity projects? Elaine, thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stefan. May I first congratulate you and your team in Statistics Korea for an excellent conference. I attended a few sessions and I was very impressed by the level of presentations and discussions. And that tells me that the statistical community is really eager to do more in the area of big data. And yes, you're right. ADB has long recognized the importance of statistical capacity building in our developing member economies. And we recently had a Strategy 2030 review. And one emphasis is the strengthening of governance and institutional capacity, and in particular, statistical capacity building. And that is one of the objectives of the Statistics and Data Innovation Unit, which was set up last year. I like the name of the unit very much. I'm not responsible for the name, by the way. I just happen to head it. But when they set it up, they named it Statistics and Data Innovation Unit. And I like it very much because I think it strikes the right balance between core traditional statistics on one hand and the new data sources, new technologies, and new techniques like big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence on the other hand. And ADB is already very well known for its economic statistics, supply use tables, multi-regional IO tables, global value chains, statistical business registers, and of course ICP for the Asia and Pacific region. And we do intend to maintain these areas of statistical strengths and are very grateful for the support and collaboration from many of our developing member economies. And I believe that core statistics have in fact stood the test of time. One of the key tools used to study the impact of the pandemic has been the multi-regional IO tables. So many international agencies such as WTO, ILO, BIS have in fact used it to show how shocks in one country reverberates across the region and what the pandemic means for the flow of goods and services, youth unemployment, and trade finance. So while the attention is on big data, I think the core statistical tools have also been carrying the day. And ADB through SDRU will definitely continue to support those. So our unit is called Statistics and Data Innovation. So we want to look at data innovation as well. We've started a number of projects over the last few months, and we'll be happy to share our experiences and our findings once those are completed. One area of big data, which I'd like to highlight, that ADB has completed a lot of work on is remote sensing and the use of satellite imagery. Last year, we published a handbook on how national statistical agencies can use remote sensing technology to estimate rice crop areas and production. We did the pilot study with 4 countries, Laos PDR, Vietnam, the Philippines, and Thailand. And it was used for land cover mapping and the generation of more timely agricultural statistics. We had the support of the Japanese space agency as well, for which we're very, very grateful. And another example of our unit's work on remote sensing is the use of satellite imagery applying deep learning models to develop more granular poverty maps. ADB will be releasing a report next week on this study. And in brief, what we did was we integrated satellite imagery with census and survey data to generate poverty maps, which are more granular than available data. And we believe that this granular poverty map, as a pilot, not only promotes SDGs and not leaving anyone behind, but it has also been used in ADB's operations. So, for example, in May, during the lockdown in Metro Manila, ADB launched a food distribution program for Filipino families. And the more granular poverty map that SDIU developed was one of the many data sources the ADB colleagues used to identify neighborhoods for food distribution. So we did these two remote sensing projects in collaboration with the national statistical agencies of our member countries. So definitely we do see statistical capacity building as involving that as well. So in that way, we hope through pilot studies to build up statistical capacity building, as well as new capacity in data innovation. And I'm also very grateful for the support and enthusiasm of these countries because they're willing to carry on with the projects after ADB's pilot studies. So institutionalization becomes really important. After the period of experimentation, there should be efforts to institutionalize these pilot studies. Stefan, I think you asked about the kinds of big data projects that NSOs could look into. I have two suggestions. First of all, I would say start small, but start now. And the first thing I would suggest is to look at where the greatest data needs are in terms of topics and domains, and where the available big data sources are. And I would suggest that the best project would be the intersection between the needs and data availability. And once that project is identified, I will encourage NSOs to start with a small scope because there'll be learning by doing, there'll be experimentation, and there'll be new tools, new techniques to learn. So most of the learning will be done by doing, as opposed to sitting in the classroom and going through the theoretical concepts. My second suggestion to operationalize something like this would be to ring fence a small team to take the project forward. And a team like that should already be subject experts. So their brief could then be to look at new data sources and new techniques, but because they are already subject experts, that would give the project the greatest chance of aligning with official statistics. So it will be official statisticians looking into these new data sources. And by ring fencing a team, I think you can ensure greater experimentation. So you set aside time for them to learn, play around with the models, and just do learning by doing. And then that also increases the chance that the the project will go beyond the pilot phase. So those are my initial thoughts. I hope we can start a conversation with those. But thank you very much for the conference. I thought it was excellent. I'm already looking forward to the next one, and I'm looking forward to UNSC in New York, fingers crossed, in March. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wow. And I mean, these projects with the remote sensing, that sounds really interesting. And I think I've always been a believer that in the intersection between statistics and geospatial information, there is a lot to be gained. I also particularly liked one formulation that you said play around. So I think, of course, we are all in very serious business here, but I think the platform in the way we conceive it by putting tools and data and training together in one place should really unleash the creativity of people and dig for the deeper value that is often hidden in the data. So I'm very grateful that you alluded to that. Okay, thank you. And we will certainly be looking forward to working with you and knocking on your door, perhaps for some tripartite kind of projects where a country and the Asian Development Bank and we with the global platform can work together. I think that could be a promising configuration. The last speaker on the first panel is Mr. Xian. Have had the pleasure of knowing him for quite a while. I always joke when I come to China talking about big data. There are very big data in China because it's a very big country and there are lots of data and big data. So Mr. Xian is the Deputy Commissioner of the National Bureau of Statistics since December 2016. We have been working very closely with the NBS for over 10 years now, and I have to be very grateful. They have created a trust fund that has allowed us international cooperation and statistical training, first focusing mostly on Asia and the Pacific, but going well beyond Asia and the Pacific in recent years. China has also agreed to help us with the funding of this transition phase of the UN Global Platform, and I really want to put on record our gratitude for China to allow us to work on this important transformation of the global platform from a proof of concept to a viable instrument. China is working with us to create a regional hub for big data in Hangzhou, in the southern city of China. And this will be a research and training center, and we are very much looking forward working on big data in Hangzhou with the NBS. Now, my question to Mr. Xian is perhaps, can you tell us a little bit about what is going on currently in China with respect to big data? What is the NBS's program in this respect? And what will be the role of the regional hub in China in Hangzhou? How do you envision this? And how can that help you at the national level, but also, of course, at the international level? And when you look at the training activities that we have conducted, where do you see the main priorities for the coming 5 years? I mean, the use of big data and data science, modernization of statistics are part of our statistical capacity building initiatives, and I'm sure they're also part of yours, and perhaps you can tell us a little bit about that. I think Mr. Xian will speak through an interpreter, but I'm very grateful that you are here. So thank you very much and greetings to Beijing.
感谢史蒂芬先生，大家全天好。
Thanks to Mr. Swanfest and good day to everyone.
这个祝贺您主持召开了一次非常成功的大会。
So first, my congratulations goes to the success of this conference.
正像您刚才说的，这几年中国国家统计局一直在推进大数据的创新和应用，我们也有一个工作计划。
As you mentioned, the National Bureau of Statistics of China has been promoting the use of big data in recent years, and we also constructed some working programs.
我们这个计划的核心之一就是让人人参与，特别是让年轻人参与。
So the core of this program is have a wide participation of statisticians, especially for the young statisticians.
通过这几年的努力，我们已经有了几十个这个案例，几十个方案。
So with the past several years of efforts, we have made many successful cases.
这些方案呢，就像一些鸡蛋一样，很快就会孵出小鸡。
So it's like many eggs, and in the future we can expect more chickens come out.
目前来看，比较成功的有这么几个方面。
So I would like to introduce you some successful cases.
第一个方面呢，就是在联合国高级别小组中提出的2个创新项目，我们取得了进展。
So the first two examples is the two data innovation solutions we have mentioned in the UN high-level group.
卫星和遥感数据应用于农业谷产，这个我们已经取得了 成功，并且呢，今天上午我的同事已经给大家做了讲解。
So, for example, the satellite imaging and the remote sensing has been applied in the agriculture statistics, especially the crop measurement. So my colleague, Mr. Stephen, has introduced this aspect in the last session.
价格和快速经济调查使用电子商务数据，我们已经与多家这个企业取得了联系，也取得了进展。
So we also made some progress in the application of e-commerce data to produce price statistics and also rapid economic monitoring.
在取得进展的第二方面，就是我们在部门合作之间，充分利用部门的行政记录，以改进我们的统计。
So the second big aspect is the use of admin data.
第三个方面呢，就是与这个企业合作，利用企业这个交易平台的交易数据，这个改进统计工作。
So we have cooperated with many government ministries to use the admin data. And the third one is we are making progress in the business statistics. That means we are using the transaction data from the e-platforms to improve our business statistics.
就像刚才史蒂文先生说的一样，杭州的中国区域中心作为全球平台的一部分，我们将按照全球平台的规则，积极参与和支持全球平台的工作。
So just now, Mr. Swanfest has mentioned we have created jointly an regional hub in Hangzhou for the global platform. So as part of the global platform, the Hangzhou Regional Center in China will cooperate with the global platform and following all the rules and guidelines of the UNGP.
从国内的定位来讲，它是我们中国国家统计局的大数据的应用中心，它是一个引领者。
So facing the domestic of China, this regional center will be the big data application center of the National Bureau of Statistics of China, and we will try to be playing a leading role in this area.
在国际来讲，刚才说了，我们是全球这个平台的一部分，我们将以推进 SDG 和官方统计大数据应用为目标，积极参与国际合作。
So internationally, as I have mentioned, this regional center will be part of the UNGP. So we'll take the promotion of SDG, statistical monitoring, and also the application of big data in official statistics as our objectives.
在新时期，社会经济发展，特别是在面对新冠疫情的情况下，加强国际合作是非常重要的。
So in this new era of data explosion and also facing the pandemic impacts, the international cooperation is quite significant.
我们真诚地欢迎国际统计机构、专家学者到中国杭州区域中心来交流访问。
So we sincerely invite the international experts to visit the Hangzhou Regional Center and to communicate with us on the use of big data.
我们已经准备好了1层的办公区域，1000平方米，有10几个办公室，每一个办公室都比史蒂芬先生的办公室要大。
So we have made 4 preparations. So I can tell you that in Hangzhou, the regional center has 1 floor for the international experts. So we have an 1,000 square meters space area, and we also has more than 10 offices to accompany you.
他的办公室大。
So I would like to tell a joke that each office is bigger than the office of Mr. Swanfest.
这个还有咖啡和茶。
And yeah, we also equipped with coffee and teas and everything.
Free. 这个关于培训问题，我认为在未来5年，关于大数据和数据科学，特别是在统计当中的这个培训是最重要的。
So talking about the priorities for the training in the coming 5 years, I think the big data and data science should be put on top.
我觉得呢，这个大学的培养和我们工作当中的培训这两方面的工作，我们都要加强。
So we should work from one aspect with the universities to improve this college training, and in another part we should have this capacity building in statistical agencies.
在很多大学，我们开设了大数据和数据科学的专业。
So in colleges we have this curriculum of big data and data science.
中国国家统计局和贵州省政府在贵州财经学院开办了大数据统计学院。
So we worked together with the Guizhou provincial government to set up a college in Guizhou Financial University to teach big data and data science, especially.
建立了大数据统计学院。
So we set up a big data and statistics college in the Guizhou Financial University.
这个同时呢，我们也要这个通过中国和联合国能力开发信托基金项目，这个开展国际培训，提高发展中国家的这个能力。
So at the same time, we will make full use of this China UN Trust Fund to improve the capacity building of the developing economies.
谢谢大家。
Thank you.
Thank you. I have to quickly find my unmute button again. Thank you, Mr. Xian, and I can assure you, everything he said about the center is true. I have been there. I have had the pleasure of visiting Hangzhou, and it is very impressive. And Mr. Xian also knows me very, very well by saying Hayao Cafe. He knows exactly that with coffee, I can always be lured to go almost everywhere on the planet. So I'm giving a little secret away here. So this is the moment where we can open to audience questions. I think we got one question. Perhaps we start with Dominic. Somebody was particularly interested that there is the issue of resilience right now, which is one of the very key concerns now of statistical institutions and capacities that we build. And of course, given your experience, perhaps particularly in working in the Caribbean, can you perhaps reflect on that a little bit and say something how important is that when you fund a project, and are there some elements in what you have done in the past that would ensure a certain degree of resilience, or do you have any other ideas or proposals what we could do differently in the future to be more resilient? Dominic.
Well, thank you for the question. I think it's a very important point. It's something that we always take into account when we fund a project. If I take, for instance, some of the lessons learned that we've learned throughout our support is that we need to pay attention to the country context and making sure that to respect the priorities of the national statistical offices. So donor coordination is very important. It's important that we tailor to the country context, the country specific needs. Also trying to look at what is every country, like especially in a regional context, what is every country's comparative advantage? Sometimes maybe one statistical office will be very good at one area, and maybe this is something where you can create a regional center of excellence, and foster South-South cooperation with the other countries in that neighborhood, so in the neighboring region. But resilience is very important. It's always something that we take into account. We want to ensure that the results are going to be sustainable, especially in that context right now of COVID-19. We know how National Statistical Office have been hampered in their ability to deliver on their mandate, and how the production of quality statistic is so important. It was already important even before the pandemic, but now it's even more important. And so that's why we need to ensure that whatever we're funding, like we're building the capacity of the National Statistical Office to be resilient in the long term.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for these reflections. Perhaps a question to Elaine. This question comes a little bit from me. I must confess. I mean, but I consider myself part of the audience too. I want to have some fun here too. Funding this project of the global platform is a little bit of a nightmare for a manager, because it's by nature a kind of infrastructural kind of a project. So it doesn't sort of show very immediate impacts, as sort of a bit of an underlying project, and of course it is very global and it's very broad. From your perspective as working in a bank, I mean, do you have some advice? You started to elaborate it a little bit of how we could perhaps access resources from your institutions. How do we get the interest of the people who have the purse in an institution like yours?
That's a very subtle way of asking.
No, it's not subtle at all. I'll confess shamelessly.
I guess we will prioritize institutionalization. As I've said a number of times in my opening remarks, that what we want to do is to build people up and also help them carry on in their way. So what we want to do is to fund pilot studies, which then the developing member economies and the national statistical offices in particular will take over and run with it thereafter. So I think that is one aspect that I think would be really important. And I think what Dominic said is really important as well. We need to cater to the individual needs of the country as well as the region. So some countries might have strengths and certain needs. So when we did the remote sensing for the croplands, we focused on rice. And we worked with the 4 countries for whom rice is a major exporting crop. And so that's how we try to tailor needs to the capacity building we're trying to build. But I would again underline institutionalization. What we hope to see is people trying different things that again meet their needs. But having done that, they can take on board the pilot studies and then continue with it thereafter. And we do see that happening for the rice crop projects, which we're very encouraged by.
Oh, thank you for this. I think the pilot approach is a very key word, because I mean we need to do both. We need to experiment a little bit and show immediate results in a very specific context, but at the same time use part of the underlying investment as an investment in something more infrastructural, and this has to be the trick, how we operate in the future. Well, perhaps the last question is to Mr. Xian. Whether the China hub has already implemented some projects, or you have some projects in mind that where would you like to start with the big data work in Hangzhou?
提的问题是我们目前的中国中心是否已经有正在进行的项目，或者是将要进行的项目，请介绍一下。
好，这个谢谢史蒂芬先生。我们杭州中心呢，现在是初期的建设阶段，已经开始了一些项目。
So thank you, Mr. Xuanfas. So the China Regional Center is still under initial construction, but we have started some program.
一个呢就是这个卫星和遥感数据的应用。
So the first one is the application of satellite imagery data and remote sensing.
第二呢就是 CPI 的这个利用超市、医院这些的交易数据来这个收集 CPI 的数据。
So the second one is to collect the data for CPI from the supermarkets and hospitals, especially their transaction data.
对，我们下一步呢还要跟这个有关的企业，你比如说阿里巴巴，还有一些网上的企业，跟他们进行战略的合作，就是利用他们的数据来改进我们的统计。
So the third one is one in mind that we are going to cooperate with Alibaba and other e-platforms to improve our statistics.
同时呢，杭州中心呢还将为中国国内的大数据在官方统计应用当中要组织相关的应用项目。
So we are facing the domestic. We are also the China Regional Center will start some programs on the application of big data in official statistics.
就像我刚才讲了，我们已经有了几十个鸡蛋，我们要通过这个中心来让它们变成小鸡。
So as I have mentioned, we already have some eggs there, and we are trying to take use of this regional center to make some chickens.
在这个过程当中呢，我们希望得到国际的专家，包括另外几个中心的这个帮助，和我们要多加强交流合作，共同努力，共同提高。
So during this process, we welcome all the communications and helps from the UNGP and from other regional centers and also from all international statistical communities.
对，也希望史蒂文先生再次到杭州中心去看一看，喝咖啡。
So we also welcome Mr. Xuan West and also your colleagues to visit this center again.
喝咖啡还有。
And have coffee. Yes, I understood that. That was the most important part. No, thank you very much. No, thank you to all the partners of the first panel. I really appreciate because such a big undertaking, we need the help from all the friends that we can get, regional, global funding mechanisms, private, public, countries, governments. And I just wanted to pick up on one point that Mr. Xian has mentioned, Alibaba. Of course, that's one of the reasons I believe that the big data center is actually located in Hangzhou, because it's close to Alibaba headquarters, and that creates particular opportunities to work together in completely new ways between a public and private partnership. So, and I have seen this happening, so this is quite fascinating. And so allow me to move on to the second panel, where we now shift a little bit to the user perspective. And we're starting with none other than my dear friend, Ms. Gemma van Halderen from UNESCAP, from the UN family. Gemma has been my friend for over 100 years. No, that's not entirely correct. But for a very long time already, we've known each other since she has been, of course, working for the Australian Bureau of Statistics and had a leading function there, contributing to the Australian government's data integration partnership. And of course, I have in particular gotten to know and to respect and appreciate her as a colleague, because she has been one of the leading figures in the UN to work on the integration of geospatial and statistical information. Now she has the job in ESCAP, so she is responsible for the whole of Asia and the Pacific, well, all the statistics in this part of the world. And you just had your big meeting there, and perhaps we can jump in right there. And last week at your ESCAP Statistics Committee, you were talking about big data, and also you were talking in one segment about human resources management. So I'm interested about those connections. What are your takeaways? What did you hear? What do countries want and need in your part of the world in terms of training, in terms of support? Gemma, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And yes, I'm very happy that you corrected the 100 years there, because I think both of us are much younger than 100 years. So lovely to see you. And likewise, we also share coffee wherever we do meet. So yes, as Stefan said, our biennial committee on statistics for Asia and the Pacific concluded last week. And I'd like, we had about 260 participants from 39 countries in our region, actually and wider, including many that are with us today here from MBS China, from Cambodia, COSTAT, Denmark, ADB and UNSD there. So we had a very good cross-section of countries as well as partners. So I'd just like to focus on 3 takeaways on the priorities and needs of the NSOs that were reflected at this committee and the events that were associated with it. And then I'll draw that back to the global platform that we're talking about here today. So a very big message that comes from countries in Asia, the Pacific, is they are very keen to hear from other national statistical officers on their experiences in using big data for official statistics. So it's about sharing national statistic office experience. And the focus is on statistics themselves, less so about the big data, but more so the focus is on the official statistics. You know, were the statistics that you produced using this data, were they experimental or were they official? How did you validate them? How did you apply confidentiality to them? So they're really trying to understand what's the statistical business process if my data source changes. And it's also not what could be done, but what has been done. So I think sharing of experiences of what could be done, which we're very much hearing a lot at this conference, they also like to say what has been done. The second point is the priorities are both technical and strategic. And on the technical side, this is technological, it's methodological, it's business process. But on the strategic side, I'd like to highlight two issues. The first one is the legal framework. There is a lot, again, what have countries done with respect to their legal framework? Have they had to make any changes? Is their legal framework already able for them to acquire big data? But what are the legal framework issues associated with producing official statistics from big data? The second one is around data sharing. And the data sharing comment was two-way. How do the National Statistics Offices access alternative data sources like administrative data, like satellite data? But then once they've got that data, produced it into official statistics, how do then they share that back out? Can they share the data back out? Can they only share the statistics? Can it only be confidentialized, and so on? So there's a whole package of issues, strategic issues around the two-way data sharing. And then the third point, and I think this wasn't explicit, but implicit is in all of the discussions, was a priority around cultural change. And this goes to both the big data, but also the management and HR. What is our NSO's mandate? What is the mandate of a National Statistics Office? And for many, many National Statistics Office, you know, their brand, if you like, is conducting large-scale censuses and conducting large-scale household and business surveys. And a lot of the resources in a statistical office goes towards data collection activities. But here with these new data sources, the mandate is sort of changing in a way. Should the mandate actually be the production of a trusted, relevant official statistics, whatever the data source? And I think here this is the cultural dimension of both big data and training and human resource management is how do we change the cultural understanding of what's the job of a National Statistics Officer, a leader of a statistics office, and is it to, certainly the fundamental principle of official statistics give us the mandate to use whatever data source is available that's the best cost-effective way and quality way. But at the same time, we need to make sure that leadership level is about producing a trusted, relevant official statistics, whatever your data source. And to me, that's a cultural shift. So bringing this to the role that the global platform can help. So the global data platform, the global platform actually has four objectives. First of all, to exchange ideas and methods for processing, analysing, visualising big data. Now here this is, you know, and there's a lot of work in that area. The second is to be a global hub for storing data. Now, and we've also just heard that the regional hubs and access to data like the Alibaba data, that's a very good role. But I'd like to highlight the last two roles. The global platform is to demonstrate the value of big data in better decision-making through official statistics, through pilots and through case studies. And I'm particularly pleased that Neil's the Niels is with us today from Statistics Denmark, because they're leading a task team on the use of big data for official statistics for the SDGs. And I think this is where we can provide some country pilots and country case studies that can be shared. And then finally, the global platform is a resource hub for training materials and workshops. And here again, the training materials and workshops are an absolutely important modality for bringing the countries together to hear from other countries, to share their experiences and perspective on how have they produced official statistics using these new data sources and new methods for their governments. So Stefan, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today as part of this session and the entire week. It's been wonderful. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, you look very good in front of this beautiful ESCAP building and the blue tie sky there. You can already sense, I wasn't perhaps so explicit, with the second segment, we moved into the user perspective, and you will see these are all national statisticians, if I count Gemma from her Australia past, and now still as a regional statisticians, you are still very close to the national statistics systems. And we immediately emphasize, we should not forget, our working group is called Big Data for Official Statistics. So, I mean, we are now moving to that second part of the title, and we are immediately entering the practical perspectives. And I thank you for Gemma for helping us with that shift of view. I mean, reflecting on the legalities and the accessibilities and the issues and the practical issues that chief statisticians are fighting with and battling with on a day-to-day basis. So we have a number of distinguished representatives from national statistical offices still to come. The next one, Gemma already mentioned him, is Niels. Hello, Niels. Niels Plough from Statistics Denmark is the Director of Social Statistics Division. And at the same time, he's also a professor in economic sociology at the University of Copenhagen and a professor in empirical economics at the Copenhagen Business School. And we have in particular known Niels as the co-chair of the UN Global Working Group almost since the very beginning. So this leads me immediately to my first question, Niels. You have been there since the very beginning with the whole big data discussion since 2014, and you have been co-chair for the last 4 years. How do you see the evolution? I mean, what has changed? Where did we start? Where are we now? Has there been a change in the mindset? What were sort of the early accomplishments? And you are in particular very knowledgeable about all of the various task teams that are operating there. And Gemma again mentioned one with the SDG support. What is the role of these task teams, and how can or should national statistical offices all around the world participate in this work? Niels, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you very much. For me, the important part of the title of the Global Working Group is the official statistics part. So I think we should have the focus on what can we actually do of statistics. And I think the development has been that in the beginning, we saw a lot of nice presentations, most of them maybe not from statistical offices, but from others, of all the nice things you can do with big data, but they were not kind of directed towards do the repetitive production of statistical products. But I think actually we are actually there. There are more and more statistical offices that are using new data sources to support their production of statistics. And the big data is an add-on to the sources that we already have. So it's a supplement that we can use, and it has a number of advantages. Now, you mentioned the task teams, and I think one could say that the task teams is one of the two backbones of what the Global Working Group is doing. The global platform is the other backbone. And the task team is where the real experts come together. Sometimes somebody confuses me for being an expert on big data, which I'm not. But those who really work with the data, they come together in the task teams. I always encourage people to visit the website of the Global Working Group to look into both the number of task teams we have on each of the different data sources, but also the very rich material that the task team has produced, handbooks and examples of what they can use the new data sources for to get inspired, and also, of course, to join, because this is where the national statistical offices and their experts come together with the experts from the agencies to work specifically on the use of a specific data source, satellite data, mobile phone data, or other kinds of data. And the combination of that and then being able to share the products of what the task teams has done through the global platform, I think is a very rich and powerful setup that I hope we will be able to bring forward just as we have been doing it for the last years. Allow me to mention an example from Statistics Denmark of what can happen for as we are a relatively small statistical agency in relation to the use of big data. We had a visit a few years ago by the guys who were setting up the global platform. And at that time, we were introduced to the AIS data, the data on ship positioning. So some of the people at my office took an interest in that. We had a hackathon where they tried to get sense of the data in relation to doing statistics in a Danish setting. We wanted the AIS data to support our harbor statistics. And we actually managed to do that so that instead of asking those who were managing the harbors for information, we took the information from the AIS data. I guess basically nobody outside of Statistics Denmark kind of realized that that happened, but for us it was a big thing. Then came the pandemic. And now through the AIS data, we were able to do harbor statistics, not on a quarterly basis, but basically on a weekly basis. And suddenly core users like the National Bank and the Minister of Finance and everybody else realized that this was a very rich source that could not only reduce the reporting from the managers of the harbors, but actually do very timely statistics in a situation where that was needed. So for me, it's a core example of what you can do if you dig into those new data sources. So it's about getting access to new data, but it's also about increasing the timeliness of the data in a specific situation. So I think there's a lot that we can use those data for in order to improve the services that we are doing as statistical agencies for our users. I think I will keep it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Niels, and thank you always for being so inspiring. There's nothing as inspiring as a very concrete story where you can tell, where you can convince people easily of the value of something. And thank you for almost making the United Nations sound like a place of fun, because I believe that that is exactly what it is, because like-minded people are coming together. And yes, we have these very traditional names of a task team, but it is exactly what you're saying. It's a couple of people who all share similar responsibilities and similar ideas and visions, and they come together and they work together and they enjoy doing so. So if there are still in the audience people from national statistical offices and institutes that have not been involved in any of our task teams of the Global Big Data Working Group, please check out our website, tell us what you're interested in, and you are certainly most welcome here to work with us. So thank you, Niels. Let's move on to Robert Mclellan from Statistics Canada. He is the Chief Technology Officer and Director of Enterprise Architecture, Strategy and Innovation at Statistics Canada. The title already sounds super modern. I must say, you have to leave it to the Canadians to do this. And he is also the current chair of the Technical Delivery Board of the UN Global Platform. So just in one word, he is responsible for all of this. And I hope this is an appropriately scary description for what you're doing, Robert. Now, The platform, as we all know, was handed over from the UK to the United Nations on the 1st of June. And as the chair of the technical delivery board of the platform, Robert, you now have to give advice and make proposals which will directly influence the development of the platform. So as you have been very much involved, I want to ask you the Quo Vadis question. Where are we going? What do you see as the capabilities of the platforms? How can national statistical institutions use it? Which needs can the platform meet, and where would you like to see the platform go? So, Robert, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan, and hello to everybody that's virtually in the conference today. So I think I would start with saying that, recount a little bit of a story from one of our technical delivery board sprints that we had hosted by the ONS in the UK. And in that one, we took SDG 911, access to all season roads. And it highlighted for me personally that oftentimes we create models, insights, indices, whatever. What are they for? Now, instinctively, everybody who's been in the statistics business, they just know that in their body and soul. But I do think that the important question is we have before us a set of complex questions. And we talk a lot about data and the need to use that data to generate insights and help us make decisions. We become a little fixated on the data. We forget about the human capital aspect of it, which is around skills and capacity. We also we need to remember, of course, that we need to provide the typically capitalized infrastructure assets to make that happen. So that could be software, it could be computing infrastructure, and so on. And so if I'm to actually generate interesting and either modified outputs that will actually create outcomes through decision making, through policy, through investment, through measurement, how do I actually remove all of the barriers to access and to action on the part of statisticians and methodologists, subject matter specialists, data stewards and data engineers, and so on. So for me, intrinsically, the platform then, what is accomplished in its first period prior to transition, is that it's demonstrated that this is entirely feasible and useful. So I think that's the first thing to highlight. So there's a couple of important things that are part of that story. So first of all, we have a scalable infrastructure that provides hopefully universal access to the capabilities that are out there today via cloud services. And what that means is that it doesn't really matter what country you're in or what agency that you're in, you have access to the necessary scalable computing and storage and so on to support the kinds of analysis with big data you might need to do. And I think if I build on that, then clearly one of the things that we need to bring to bear then is tools. So we have developer services that are part of the actual platform. And we also have method services. So either pre-existing methods or ones that are developed together through collaboration. These provide the means to do something interesting with the data to generate the insights. If I build on that, then data is key. And so today we have very rich data sources, very large data sources, whether it be flight data, ADS data, the shipping data, AIS that's been mentioned. I think the other thing is that we see ourselves as being part of a pathway to unlock the enormously rich Earth observation data that is out there. And of course, not to take it away, so to speak, from, say, physical Earth sciences and things, but what we want to do is to take that data, extract the value, combine it with our statistical data, and now all of a sudden we have something very powerful, both in terms of addressing issues around granularity. How do I generate the insights in a timely way at the level of granularity that people need potentially to take action in a cost-effective and cost-efficient way, because there's always pressure on budgets, and the COVID economic impact is also having a very negative effect. And so really the key platform capabilities then, the marketplace to find what it is that you might want to use, the learnings and collaboration that's there to basically help you either develop your own capacity or connect with others, the method and developer services and the data services. So one of the key questions then I think is, well, that's great. How do I actually get access to those services? And so again, we see that with my colleague Ronald from the UNSD in New York, excuse me, we have then support for the platform, and there are ways and means by which you can get accounts. And I encourage you to reach out. Niels talked about the task teams that were going on. So I think, again, technology for its own sake is kind of a waste of time. I'm deeply technical by nature and history, but if there aren't people wanting to use it for purpose, who cares? So I think that task teams provide a means by which the data and the expertise have been coming together to take advantage of the platform services to generate insights. We also have projects going on. So for example, the Cambodian Statistics Agency is working with us on the .stat initiative. This is a platform that was developed originally by the OECD and other people, such as Australia. And it provides, again, a ready-made platform that we can put in our platform services, and now all of a sudden we give yet even more capability to people for them to do what they need to do. I'd like to quickly highlight, of course, that we have regional hubs, and Stefan mentioned at the top, we have the various Rwanda and the United Arab Emirates and our colleagues in China. And again, I think that there is now an ecosystem that we are creating that will help us with that. So what is the competitive advantage of the platform? Why should it exist? What is it for? And what I would say here is that unlike other platforms, particularly commercial ones, this one is open to all developing and developed nations to work together and their agencies. We can also invite researchers or experts from university and academia and other places as part of our task teams to help inform and lead us forward. I think it provides the basis to I say democratize the tools and methods. It's all available. And it's a platform business model where the net value of the platform goes up the more the data providers, consumers, the statisticians, and so on participate. So what's key for us here then is to say, how do we grow that? Where do we go to next? And so finally, what I would say here is, excuse me, I think the key thing we have is we have some success today. We need to celebrate what those are and tell those stories everywhere. Because again, action and output and outcome is a very compelling narrative, always is. The next thing I would say is that we are going to reach out as a result of some sprint activities that we had. We're reaching out to the task teams for a further re-engagement to say, what are your needs roadmaps? And that is basically going to drive then what services we need to put in place. We're looking to evolve the marketplace model that we have today. And so we can talk about that more at another time. We are refining how the hubs and the central platforms work together from the point of view of governance and services. Clearly, sustainable funding driven by examples of success is critical. You know, as I look at international efforts and listening to Dominic at the top, one thing I would suggest is that today we go off and we engage in very excellent development programs. And how are those technologies or platforms being created to support those activities? I suggest that there is a synergy where we connect our global platform activities increasingly, potentially with member countries to see how they might make more use of that in their activities. And then I think that we want to refine the services. We have been reviewing some services that we have today that need to be pruned. They're lower value, they don't get much use. We continue to look to optimize cost. And we want to be driven really by the work that users and so on need to do. Data as a service will be a key focus for us as we go forward, and we are already seeing increased activities. So I'm mindful that I've probably used my time here. I'll stop and let you continue.
All right. Thank you, Robert. And I think everybody can see why we have you on board, not only on board, but we have you chairing the board, because you are definitely very knowledgeable. And I think you bring also I was almost going to say a refreshing business perspective, I mean, to our statistical community. And I think that is certainly something we need. I wanted to pick up on one thought that you mentioned with the .stat and that is then my transition to our last speaker. I mean, one of the things that I've always been particularly excited and proud of is that the United Nations is a family of developed and developing countries, and we are all in this together, and we can help each other. Of course, the transfer of knowledge is often from the developed countries to the developing countries. And one such example is the DOTSTAT technology, which was originally, as you mentioned, developed by the OECD, but in an OECD context, but is now through us and our projects being applied in developing countries. And Cambodia is such a country. That's why I'm so pleased to have Lena Hung here from the National Institute of Statistics of Cambodia, where she is, of course, the Director General, and she can surely tell us a little bit about that experience. So she has, she's a very young lady. She has 40 years of experience in statistics, and her focus has always been on population census surveys, gender statistics, and gender mainstreaming. And of course, she's also an expert in various statistical surveys. Now, Lena works in a country that has a strong focus on Digital Cambodia 2020 and the ASEAN Ministerial Forum on ICT digitalization were well supported by the government of Cambodia. So you seem to be working in a context where there is a general awareness of the need for digitalization and modernization. So I was just wondering, perhaps you can explain to us how that affects your work, how that perhaps helps the goals of modernizing your institute. And then we know, of course, from our close cooperation with your office that you have been involved in quite advanced IT projects. And the CAMSTAT project is one of them that you're doing actually with the UN Global Platform. So I'm very curious to hear from you. How is your assessment of this experience? What do your staff tell you? What was their experience, both with the platform as such and as a human tool in terms of human capacity building? So how can we learn new skills and new techniques by working with these new tools? So Lena, the floor is yours, and thank you for being with us this morning. Lena, can you hear us?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Stephen. For Cambodia, the Royal Government of Cambodia recently hosted a digital conference known as Digital Cambodia 2020 and the ASEAN Ministerial Forum on ICT, which is the first annual conference that celebrated the kingdom's growing technology startup sector and discussing and showcasing the recent trend and development in the digital technology and provide perspective challenges facing the global and local information technology as well as the opportunity of developmental purposes. Digital Cambodia 2020 is a pillar to achieve the policy that the Royal Government has prepared, for example, the digital economy policy and the digital government. In this aspect, the National Institute of Statistics of Cambodia received a great opportunity to promote the importance of digital and information technologies and telecommunication to improve statistical system and data production more efficiency and strengthen technical skill of its staff. Furthermore, through Digital Cambodia 2020 and the ASEAN Ministerial Forum on ICT, it showed up a good experience for the National Institute of Statistics to engage more closely from different private sector entities and organizations, especially National Institute of Statistics and development partner have been closely looking at ways to improve their collaboration and coordination toward a joint framework of action under the overall framework of the National Strategy for the Development of Statistics. Specific priorities are related to institutional strengthening, financing for statistics, and SDG dissemination, focusing not only the advanced digital tool for data exchanging and reporting, but also data disseminating platform for better policy making and user need. To modernization of the institution, National Institute of Statistics has set its vision 2030 as a Cambodian national statistical system must be independent, impartial, fully equipped, and capacitated to help transition Cambodia economy from the traditional to a digital economy with efficient, computerized and quality business processes. This is premised on the assumption that data will be collected, circulated, disseminated, and analyzed in a timely and quality fashion, relying increasingly on big data, open data, and partnership with the private sector. This should also be done with a client-oriented approach, espousing professionalism, integrity, quality, sustainability, and effectiveness in managing resource for expanding the use of administrating record and managing information system. How to reach this vision? There are 4 key components. There are 4 key components to be visualized. First, effective institutional framework and budget autonomy of the NIS. Second, effective plan financing and prioritizing in line with the public finance management reform program. Third, human capital in statistics is the heart of modernization of the institution and data dissemination using modern ICT technology and infrastructure. At present, the National Institute of Statistics At present, the National Institute of Statistics, with technical support by UNSD in collaboration with other development partners such as OECD, UNFPA, UNICEF, and SIDA Statistics Sweden, has been implementing projects on SDG monitoring, which is mainly focused on data dissemination platform using statute technology and has localized a CAMSTAT database system in Cambodia. Through this implementation experience, I must say that it is a big IT-related project provide a new skill and new technology for the National Institute of Statistics. More specifically, the staff gain knowledge and experience how to export CAMinfo data out of the info, clean extracted data, structured data following SDMH standard, and upload data into CAMSTAT. The staff has also received opportunity to build their skill in data standard and tool of good practice in creating a customized data structure definition to include indicator and disaggregation and subnational area. In addition, the National Institute of Statistics has received training provided by the international agency in subjects such as the fundamental of data modeling, SDMH information model, START data explorer, data lifecycle manager, data sharing protocol, and CAMSTAT reporting platform. Even more on that, through the implementation experience of CAMSTAT, the National Institute of Statistics Cambodia has received an experience of building stronger coordination function of the statistical unit of the line ministry and closely coordinated between the National Institute of Statistics and UN system that has been providing support in the area of statistics in Cambodia, especially build open data and statistical ecosystem and can draw on information from line ministry for use in monitoring progress on SDG in a crucial impact. To more effectively implementation, CAMSTAT and the strategy for the development of new skill and learning new technology, we recognize that the required additional training for statistical staff and manager of both at the National Institute of Statistics and Line Ministry should be continued. Also, in view of technical aspect, the development and maintenance of CAMSTAT serving as a national platform for SDG reporting to enable NIS as the central repository in reporting and disseminating SDG indicator and other national development indicator to make available to the broadest possible audience. In addition, the institutional arrangement for required effective data management and development of statistical protocol, including use of common concept and methodologies, classification, more efficient development of tools for data exchanging, and keeping clean line of communication with a view of standardization of national statistical data and metadata to be integrated and exchanged between the National Institute of Statistics.
Lina, sorry to interrupt, but we are running a little bit out of time. And is there a way for you perhaps to conclude in the next minute or so? It's very interesting what you're sharing, what it means at the practical level in your country.
To achieve that, however, the National Institute of Statistics developing and implementing an ICT strategy policies and a plan to provide stat of the ICT capacity to support all aspects of statistic process, collection, processing, analysis, maintenance, and dissemination through modernizing the ICT infrastructure and ensuring National Institute of Statistics is well-resourced, staffed, and equipped to provide the ICT device. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing it. And I really appreciate that you highlighted two things that I take away from your talk. Is one is the wonderful cooperation that you had at the national level, but also at the international level, because I could see that you've been quite successful of cooperating with a number of international institutions and actors and bringing them together to help you. And I think throughout your presentation, you always very much emphasize the human dimension, that this is not only about technology and tools and machines, but I mean, it is critically important that the humans keep, that we humans keep pace with all of the capabilities that are around us. So that's also a wonderful lead over to the questions. We are a little bit late, but we started also 10 minutes late. So I will rob from you a few minutes for at least two questions. I think I have an idea how we can do that. There were a number of questions, but I think they revolve around two issues. One is the private sector, the role of the private sector, and how do we work with the private sector? What are possibilities and pitfalls and experiences? And perhaps Niels and Robert can quickly talk to this question. And then the second question is the second group of questions is very much focused around training, the human dimension, the capital. How do we train people? How do we overcome perhaps the resistance of some people or the fear towards modern tools so that the humans do really keep pace? Where do we find experts that have practical experiences? And perhaps Gemma and Lina can talk a little bit about this this training dimension. What do we need to do? How can we do it effectively? So I think with these two sets of questions, we will then also wrap it up. But I mean, I first give the floor to Niels on this reflection with how do we operate with the private sector here?
It's a very important point, and we do actually have a task team on access and partnership, because the access to those data, we need partnership. They are different in many ways, and one of them is that they are not produced by like public entities, they are produced by private companies. I think we have a lot of good experience, but it takes time, and it takes time to convince the private producers of the data that what we want to use them for, which is official statistics, would not be in competition with what they want to use their data for. So I think we have a lot of good examples of how this can be done, but it is a new thing that we need to do in order to get the data we want to use. We are not used to kind of having this kind of negotiation and dialogue with the data users. But I think we have a lot of good examples of how that can be done in relation to, for instance, scanner data that we're using for the price indexes, but also in other areas. And it is a very important point. And I guess it's a point that never ends. We never kind of comes up with the general solution for everything. We need to have this dialogue from now on and forever in relation to getting access to those data.
Sorry, thank you very much, Niels. Robert, your perspective on the private sector cooperation?
Well, I agree with what Niels has just said. I think that one of the questions we have to ask ourselves, and it also links broadly to administrative data in the first place, I guess, is if we're hoping to actually create either alternate data sources or means of statistical production, we have to be addressing the issue of continuity of supply. And what is the alternate source of data should that actually become an issue? I think most corporations have some notion of philanthropic or corporate social responsibility aspirations. And I think that certainly to the extent that we can make clear what our purpose and what our use is intended to be, we benefit. If I take the technology point of view for just a second, one of the classic conversations we have is, am I getting locked in? Am I getting locked into commercial technology versus, for example, open source? We see so much technology out there in the open source domain that I think that we have established that there is much that we can harvest without being locked into a particular vendor. And I do think that the platform has taken a very good strategy, and it's actually working with all of the major cloud vendors, including Alibaba and others. So I think the trick for us is to understand what we are doing to make sure that we can transparently communicate what we want to do, satisfy ourselves that we meet the continuity aspirations or needs for statistical production, and also to really take an approach that doesn't see us end up in a strong commercial relationship that might be limiting. I will just make a final quick comment. My experiences on the privacy task team really shone a light on one of the key things about working with private sector people. They have some very deep research experts. And so there we worked with Elaine and other folks from corporations like Microsoft and others. And we were never anywhere near a product space. We were talking about how do we solve these problems. And so I think that is something we need to remember, that working with private corporations, how do we actually raise the level of knowledge and practice in all directions, including for them? And I think that that's another big opportunity.
Thank you very much, Robert, for sharing the perspectives. Let's move to the training and human resource dimension. Lina, you mentioned several times the importance of training. Can I perhaps ask what is your experience of what is the best training you have seen? What is important to be successful at the country level, such as yours? What would you like to see in terms of training? Lina, did you need to unmute your microphone? Yeah. Can you hear us, Lina? Yes,
yeah.
wonderful. Thank you. I asked a question about what is a good training in your view.
So I may say that CAMSTAT will be an end-to-end statistic solution covering all phases of the statistic processing life cycle from data collection through the dissemination. The implementation of the CAMSTAT system has the goal to strengthen statistic cooperation throughout the national statistical system and international monitoring agency. It will improve coordination and harmonization in the production of dissemination of timely and highly quality data and statistical information to support government in the policy making. So we think that the training is very important.
Thank you very much. Perhaps then, and Gemma, last but not least, you started the whole second round, so I'm coming back to you to help to wrap it up. And I'm just thinking, I mean, we also talked about your meeting and we said big data and human resources, and there we are back to exactly that square one. I mean, some thoughts and advice from you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stefan, and thank you very much to everyone. So just very briefly on the training side, I've seen two main forms of training, and both of them have great strengths. The first one is more the traditional classroom type training, and there we have, quite a lot of e-learning courses and lecture style courses through the Statistical Institute for Asia and the Pacific, hold training courses in big data for official statistics. And we also partner with countries like COSTAT, who also provide training programs on the use of big data. I think the second one, though, is the one that I've seen real progress on. The second example is the one I've seen. When I first started in the UN about 2 years ago, we were holding a training program or workshop, if you like, in Bangkok, jointly between UNSD, the task team on satellite data, and ESCAP on the use of satellite data for producing official statistics. And this was a hands-on training course. The Queensland University of Technology joined forces with the two UN bodies. Countries were in the room. They went out into the field with their mobile phones, collected some data, came back into the office, tried to work out how to produce a statistic from the mobile phone data they had just collected in the field. Yes, they had a nice tour of Bangkok as well, but this was a very hands-on course. And then and trying to get that satellite data from their GPS. The second course was one that was hosted by BPS Indonesia, but it was the same model. This was on using mobile phone data for tourism, mobility statistics. And again, we had the task team on mobile phone data paired up with a country. Here it was BPS Indonesia with the development partners, in this case, UNSD and UNESCAP. And they put together a plan on how to use mobile phone data for what statistics, tried to produce it. We had the technology in the room, we had experts in the room, and then the countries have gone away with a plan on how to actually produce it. So it's exactly what both Niels and Robert were saying there. Experimentation, real life experimentation, learning how to use the technology, the data, the process, and then having the real, happy moment at the end where they say, oh, I've produced a statistic here based on this new data source and based on these new methods. So to me, the two types of skill and training are equally important, the classroom one, but this hands-on one. And I think that just bringing it back again, the task teams and their role in the global marketplace and the global platform, really heartened to hear that that's the direction that Robert and the team are taking, because I think this is where the users who are currently the national stats officers really want to can get some real benefit. So Stefan, I'll leave there. I'm conscious of the time, but thank you very much for that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for finishing on such an upbeat note. So I have the pleasant task now to wrap it up, I really want to thank all of the speakers. It was fascinating. I mean, Dominic, Elaine, Mr. Xian, Gemma, Niels, Robert, Lena, I think, and of course, thanking also our Korean team in the background that make it possible for us to talk to each other. This was wonderful, and all those, my team, to help to prepare the whole session. So it was great. Thank you also for managing the time, for contributing so much content. I really love our spirit. We are in the middle of a big crisis with COVID, but I think we are a good example of every crisis is an opportunity. And I think we're having really now more than ever moment. And I think that's exactly what we need to how we need to approach this. The UN Global Platform for me is a fascinating product because, I mean, it is true United Nations. It's a collaborative effort. When I started my career, I used to say the United Nations is this funny organization that puts a table in the middle of the room and then people come and sit and talk to each other. That is essence the United Nations. But I think the United Nations 2020 is a little bit more modern. We put a cloud in the middle of the room and everybody connects from all over the world. And that is the new United Nations. And in that sense, the global platform is a fascinating product. I must confess, it keeps me up at night because, I mean, the sustainable financing aspect of it is not resolved yet. So, but I hear Robert and I like his approach, his upbeat approach. It says, let's base it on success. I hear Elaine, we need specific projects, core projects, pilot projects to build around it. So I hope that we together in the next year or two, we take that cap and put the UN Global Platform on a solid footing. Because yes, there are issues, there are difficulties about access and privacy protection and quality control, but there are also, as we heard tonight, enormous benefits. So I think we're always talking about unleashing the power of data. Well, I think this is the way to do it. And I was just thinking about it. I mean, here is a place, the UN Global Platform, where we have data, where we have tools, and where we have training. And if we translate that now into a different universe, doesn't that sound like you walk into a modern kitchen and everything works and the fridge is full and all the food ingredients are there, and on top of it you have the recipes right there and you have somebody helping you and teaching you to cook a wonderful meal. So this is how I like to think of the global platform, and I want us to finish on this note. Thank you very much for everybody who contributed. Thank you to everybody who listened. And then have a good rest of the day and good night to those where it's dark in the background. Thank you very much.